and concerns that seem to bother you and you can find the answer? Here at this program, we will give you the best answers from the Word of God that you can live by in your Christian living. Share us your stories and we'll be willing to help. Matthew 11:28 says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." This is Dear Pastor.
There are a lot of times where I really don't want to go to church or find myself being lazy to attend worships. So what should I do to make me go to church or attend religious services without feeling this laziness or this lazy feeling to go to the church?
So that's a very good question. Probably if we can also state it in another way, he doesn't really feel like going to church or going to worship, right? Well, if we consider that question and trying to find the root cause of that, he doesn't feel like it would be an inspiring experience going to church. Now, what can we do, or what can we share to, what's his name again?
Andre.
Now, Andre, first of all, let me share these ideas about worship. If we look into the Bible, there are several principles that we can find, although not all of them are explicit and not all of them are straight to the point when it comes to stating the word worship or going to church for worship. But some texts, some passages suggest or tell us that our duty as human beings is to worship God, and we were created to worship God. Like in Ecclesiastes 12:13, our duty is to fear God. So if we say to fear God, it can also convey worshiping God. Romans 12:1 also tells us that through our bodies we can worship God. So through this we can say that our duty as human beings is to worship God. So if our purpose in this world is to worship God, then shouldn't we really be doing that, right? But then Andre probably feels bored.
Yeah.
Going to worship, not just probably in the church, or probably if he's a dormitorian, he feels bored going to dormitory worship services.
Probably if it's in the house kind of setting, probably going to wake up in the morning.
Very early in the morning, right? I know of some homes, some families, what they would do is that they would usually, even when the children are still very young, they would usually use the adult Sabbath school lesson for their evening worship. Now, I don't know if the kids out there, especially those who are very young, like from 0 to like 7 years old, if they enjoy using the adult Sabbath school lesson quarterly for their worship. So what's the point here? It's a challenge for us. Like, for example, for me, it's a challenge for me as a worship leader. We have to find ways on how worship can be interesting, especially to young people like you. I remember what we do now at home is that we don't use the adult lesson quarterly for our worship. What we would do is that we have this, we would use these children's songs. So we would lead our children in singing these action songs like When Jesus in the Family, other songs.
All those action songs that are good for small children, that they would be engaged.
And then we would use the series, the volume, Bible Friends.
Oh, yeah,
that has so many pictures, right?
Yes.
In other words, we who are into leading worship, we have to find ways on how to make worship interesting. Because if our duties is to worship God, if our purpose for this world is to worship God, then those who are engaged in leading worship, they have to find ways on how worship can be interesting to other people. Right? But another another thing that we should understand about worship is that it has something to do with relationship. For example, the two of you, if you have friends, have you experienced getting bored with your close friends? I mean,
Yeah.
in my case, with my best of friends, like you can talk about everything under the sun. When you have good relationship with someone, you want to spend every minute with that person, right?
Yes. At most times, you want to be with them probably 25/7.
Yeah, if there is such a time like 25/7. But in other words, if we consider God as someone that we can relate with, and we want to improve our relationship with Him, worship is one of those avenues in which we can improve our relationship with Him. We worship Him, we study His Word, and He talks to us through His Word as well, and we can talk to Him through prayer. And many of those things are done in worship, especially worship in church. So, if we consider worship as a means in which we can relate with a best friend, and that's God, in other words, we can have a different uh, outlook on worship. And I hope if Andre will consider that relating to God as to a friend through worship, I think worship in church or in the dormitory would be very interesting.
I think, Pastor, I'd like to share something in my situation. I've felt the same way for some time before when I was probably a first year student here at AUP. I think one of the things that made me bored in worship is that I think I was engaged less. So I think just lately this years I've tried probably engaging in Sabbath school lesson,
Yeah, that's
being
good.
able to being actively participate in the things that are being done inside the church. It gave me bigger interest in going to church and probably in attending worship, because I think being able to share all those things that you've studied or probably you've learned with the people we know, I think being active inside the church helps you to be engaged in this kind of services.
And that's very true. If you come to church as an spectator, as someone who would somewhat like watch a TV, you will really get bored because you become an spectator. You want to entertain yourself. But in worship, we're not like that, especially in church. That's why whenever we would announce something about worship, we say for the participant, we don't call them participants. We call them worship leaders. We're all the participants. Everyone who comes to church for worship is a participant. So when you participate actively in worship, you don't get bored, and you are blessed, and you are inspired.
So I think another way is just being active and
Yes.
being
Engaging more.
engaging yourself in the worship
With the
itself, because
activities.
not being active, even in the classrooms, right? If you're not having any attention, or you're not being motivated by anything,
Not
like
participating at all.
you
Yeah.
don't get anything, or you don't enjoy it as much as the people who are trying to answer questions and try to
Get
kind
the
of
teacher's
engage in this
attention.
in the learning process. So
Yeah, another thing about it's not just being active. A lot of people are active in church, but they're active on different things.
yes,
It's like their body is there, but their mind is not there,
yeah,
right? So you also have to be men, not just physically, but your mind is there for the
Active
worship,
too, yes.
active for worship, not just for other things. Like if you go to church playing COC on your gadget, you did not come there for worship, and you again become bored. You will become bored. And also, when you come to church, you really have to be prepared. If there is a study time for worship, like the
lesson.
discussion of the lesson quarterly, then you have to be prepared for it. Again, you have to be active. you have to be engaging when you come to church. You're not there as an spectator, as someone who would just watch the TV, but you're there as a participant.
So I think another thing I've learned when I was a kid is look your best.
To have gone to a date, but you know, in a date, you're not just actively participating in the date. Your mind is into it. I had a friend back in college. He and his girlfriend, they had a date, and then they were seated next to each other, and his girlfriend was talking to him, but he was texting another person. And his girlfriend got mad at him. So your mind has to be there on the date, and of course you have to be addressed properly on a
So
date.
the attention should be
Yes.
for the person.
You don't go on a date just wearing sandal shirt and wearing sleepers, right? I don't know if your girlfriend will like that or your boyfriend will like
You
that.
gotta look your best.
Yes.
So I think if the world will see you, at least you should be at least presentable in the sight, not just for your boyfriend or girlfriend, but to everyone else.
Yes, absolutely. So again, the principle that I want to leave, especially to Andre, is that worship is relationship. Not just the duty of man, but it has something to do with us relating with God as to a friend.
So mga KLR, I hope that, especially Kuya Andre, I hope that you have learned something out of the advice that's given to you by Pastor X. And
So, hang in there because we have more interesting things to talk about. And Life Radio will be back after this short break.
L,
I,
F, E, R,
A,
D.
I,
O,
I'm Esther.
I'm Jana.
I'm Jem.
I'm Melvin.
I'm Christine.
I'm Kim.
And I'm Rustin.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope to be with you again in the next episode of Dear Pastor. This is Life Radio signing off. Bye!